In 1969, 4 nuns from St. Amelia's convent vanished into the mist after the midnight bell rang. 47 years later, a priest restoring the forgotten chapel uncovered a sealed confession beneath the altar, and a truth that the Vatican had buried in silence. The autumn of 1969 wrapped the hills of Vermont in cold fog and dying leaves. Within St. Amelia's convent, 4 sisters prayed beneath candlelight, their last prayer before disappearing without a trace. For decades, villagers whispered of hymns echoing through the forest at night. No bodies, no footprints, only the sound of the chapel bell tolling long after the convent was declared abandoned. Why did the church erase this story from its archives, and what could be so terrifying that even heaven seemed to turn away? For years, believers feared it was punishment, a sign that faith itself could vanish. But sometimes divine silence hides not wrath, but mercy. By the end of this story, you'll know what the priest found beneath the chapel, and why the Vatican wished it had never been unearthed. Welcome to Bible Stories and Mysteries. Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. The wind that night moved like a living thing, whispering through the birch trees, brushing cold fingers along the chapel's stone walls. Inside St. Amelia's convent, the air smelled of beeswax, linen, and damp earth. A single candle trembled on the altar as Sister Agnes recited the final prayer of Compline. The other 3 sisters, Margaret, Claire, and young Beatrice, knelt behind her, their heads bowed, hands clasped tight around worn rosaries. Outside, fog rolled thick from the river, crawling over the windows like breath. It was October 3rd, 1969. The harvest moon hung pale and distant, veiled by clouds. A bell rang once from the tower. Its tone was soft at first, then strangely hollow, as if echoing from under the ground. Sister Agnes looked up. "No one was to ring the bell tonight," she whispered. The others exchanged frightened glances. Sister Beatrice, barely 22, bit her lip and turned toward the dark corridor that led to the belfry stairs. "Perhaps the wind moved the rope," she murmured, but her voice wavered. She didn't believe it herself. They tried to continue the prayer, but the rhythm faltered. Each syllable seemed to sink into the stone floor, swallowed by silence. Another chime, louder, longer. This time, the flame on the altar bent backward, as though pulled by something unseen. Sister Claire gasped and dropped her rosary. The beads scattered like black pearls across the floor. When she bent to collect them, she froze. From the cracks between the flagstones, a faint blue light seeped upward, soft, pulsing, alive. Agnes's voice broke the silence. "Do not move. It is only the earth breathing." But the light spread, forming thin veins of radiance across the stone, reaching toward the crucifix mounted above the altar. Christ's bronze eyes seemed to shimmer in response. Then, for one terrible heartbeat, the entire chapel glowed. The fog outside pressed against the windows until they shuddered. The bell rang again, 3 times, sharp and deliberate. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." And Psalm 23:4. The sisters screamed the verse together, voices clashing, desperate, but the sound vanished before it reached the walls, as if the air itself had swallowed the prayer. When the light faded, all 4 were kneeling, trembling, eyes fixed on the crucifix. A drop of water, or blood, fell from its feet and struck the altar cloth. Sister Agnes crossed herself. "The sign has come," she whispered. "What sign?" Sister Margaret demanded. Her voice cracked. "Mother Superior said we were never to speak of such things again." Agnes turned toward her slowly, her face pale but calm. "The same sign that appeared before his resurrection, we have been chosen to witness." A sudden wind blew open the chapel doors. The fog poured in like smoke, thick and cold. The candles went out. They could hear it then, faintly, the sound of distant singing. Women's voices, layered and echoing, reciting Kyrie Ellison. Sister Beatrice clutched Agnes's sleeve. "It's coming from the forest," but Agnes shook her head. "No, child, it's coming from beneath us." The ground beneath the altar shivered. Dust fell from the rafters. Somewhere deep below, a door, or perhaps a tomb, seemed to open with a sigh. The youngest nun began to cry. Margaret wrapped her arms around her, whispering prayers. Claire stumbled to the doorway, gasping for air, but the fog met her like a wall. She could see nothing, not even the path to the convent garden. And then came the silence. Heavy, absolute. It was said later that the villagers awoke to the sound of a single bell tolling far away, 12 times for midnight, then once more, lower and longer, as though mourning. By dawn, the chapel stood empty. No overturned chairs, no struggle. The door was closed and bolted from the inside. On the altar, 4 rosaries were laid side by side, their beads glistening with moisture. The crucifix above them gleamed faintly in the morning light. And where the sisters had knelt, faint impressions remained in the dust, as if their bodies had simply dissolved into light. The local priest, Father Callan, arrived that afternoon. He found only silence. The air still smelled of wax and lavender. The Bible on the lectern was open to the Gospel of John. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. He closed the book and whispered, "Lord, receive their souls." Outside, the fog began to lift. For a moment, sunlight pierced the clouds and touched the bell tower. The bell swung once more, though no hand pulled its rope. Some secrets echo louder than prayers. And that was the last day the people of Vermont ever heard St. Amelia's bell. The convent was sealed by order of the diocese, but as decades passed, the villagers said the prayers never stopped, and neither did the light beneath the chapel. After that morning in 1969, St. Amelia's convent became a wound upon the landscape, a place the villagers could see but never enter. The church sealed the doors with wax and iron, forbidding anyone to speak of the vanished sisters. They said the grounds were cursed by hysteria and grief, but the people of Northfield, Vermont remembered differently. They remembered the light that rose from the forest that night, a column that pulsed through the fog like a living flame. They remembered how the air itself seemed to hum for days afterward, and how the birds would not sing near the chapel again. By the time winter came, St. Amelia's stood in silence, snow piled upon its roof, muffling the world beneath it. Inside, the air had gone still, yet the candles never truly went dark. Caretakers were sent once a year to inspect the property. None lasted long. One, a deacon named Rowe, fled after 3 nights, claiming he had heard voices beneath the floor, the soft cadence of women praying in Latin. When questioned by the diocese, he could only repeat one word over and over: miserere. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Psalm 130. By 1974, the convent had become a local ghost story. Teenagers dared each other to approach its gates, but none ever crossed the threshold. Those who tried swore they heard bells tolling deep in the earth. Even nature began to withdraw. The oaks near the chapel stopped blooming, their bark darkened as though burned from within. The stream that once ran beside the convent changed course after a storm, its water now flowing away from the hill, as if the ground itself refused to nourish what lay above. The silence was not empty. It listened. In 1982, Father Callan, the same priest who found the empty chapel 13 years before, returned to say Mass for the dead sisters. He was older now, trembling, but determined to give peace to the unburied. He unlocked the chapel door alone. The hinges groaned. Inside, dust rose in slow spirals. His candle flickered as if recognizing something unseen. The air was thick, cold, and strangely fragrant, lavender, beeswax, and something metallic, like rusted blood. He approached the altar. The 4 rosaries were still there, untouched, gleaming faintly in the dim light. But now, beneath them, he saw faint circles burned into the wood. 4 perfect rings, as though something hot had rested there long ago. He began the Kyrie eleison, his voice shaking. On the second line, the candle went out. When he lit it again, the crucifix above the altar was gone. Only its shadow remained, burned into the stone wall like a scar. Father Callan stumbled backward, clutching his chest. He swore he heard footsteps moving through the pews behind him, slow, deliberate, the soft rustle of habits brushing against wood. He called their names one by one. Agnes, Margaret, Claire, Beatrice. No answer came, only a whisper. "Why did you close the door?" When the villagers found him the next morning, he was sitting at the front pew, alive but unresponsive, his eyes fixed on the altar. In his hand, he clutched one of the rosaries, the beads fused together as if by fire. The church declared his illness a stroke. The chapel was sealed again, this time under Vatican authority. Records were buried. The parish renamed itself St. Joseph's, as if forgetting could erase the wound. But silence does not forget. The villagers spoke quietly of what they saw afterward, a faint glow within the chapel windows every year on October 3rd, the night the sisters vanished. Sometimes the bell would ring once at midnight, a lonely, hollow sound that echoed through the valley. Old farmers claimed they saw 4 figures walking through the mist toward the forest, holding candles that never went out. Children were warned never to play near the hill, and so the story faded into whispers, a memory passed between generations, like a secret sin. There is nothing hidden that will not be revealed. Luke 12. By the early 2000s, St. Amelia's was nothing more than a ruin on the parish map, overgrown by ivy and silence. But the ground around it still seemed unwilling to rest. No grass grew over the chapel's shadow, no animals nested nearby. For 47 years, no priest dared return. No one prayed within those walls. Yet on quiet nights, the villagers swore they could still hear the soft rhythm of 4 voices carried by the wind, a litany for mercy, rising and fading through the pines. And so the silence endured, not dead, but waiting. By the spring of 2016, the forest had almost swallowed St. Amelia's whole. The path, once lined with maple trees, was now a tunnel of shadow and ivy, and the chapel's bell tower leaned slightly, its cross lost among the branches. The world had forgotten the place, except one man. Father Michael Darcy arrived on a grey April afternoon. His boots sank into damp leaves as he stepped out of his car and gazed up at the ruins. He carried a worn Bible, a set of tools, and a quiet ache he never spoke of. For years, he had served parishes in silence, haunted by a single question. Why had his sister left her convent in Vermont in 1969, and why had no trace of her ever been found? Her name had been Sister Beatrice. He told no one that this assignment had been his request. The diocese wanted only a report, perhaps a plan to restore or sell the land. But Father Darcy came for something deeper, a confession from the earth itself. The key turned reluctantly in the lock. When the chapel door opened, a breath of cold air escaped, as if the building itself exhaled after years of restraint. Inside, time had hardened into dust. The pews were grey with decay, the windows cracked like fractured halos, yet the altar remained strangely untouched. 4 rosaries still lay upon it, their beads darkened but intact. He knelt and whispered, "Peace be upon this house." The sound echoed, then faded into the stone. When you enter a house, first say, "Peace to this house." Latu 10:5. As he prayed, the faint scent of lavender filled the air, soft, familiar, and human. It was the same scent he remembered from his sister's habit when she embraced him goodbye decades earlier. He froze. The air grew heavier, charged, almost reverent. The silence here was not emptiness, it was attention. Every sound he made felt heard. He began to work through the chapel systematically, sweeping debris, recording damage, photographing relics for the archives. Yet the deeper he moved into the nave, the more uneasy he felt. The floor creaked under his weight, not with rot, but with a hollow resonance, as though something beneath waited. On the second night, he woke to the sound of bells. Not the distant metallic toll of wind, but 4 precise chimes, each one distinct. He rose, trembling, candle in hand, and followed the sound through the darkened aisle. It led him to the altar. There, the rosaries had changed position, arranged now in the shape of a cross. He whispered aloud, "Who are you?" Only the flicker of his flame replied. He opened his Bible for comfort. The page he turned to was unmarked, yet the verse his eyes fell upon read, "The dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear shall live." John 5:25. The words unsettled him. He closed the book and pressed it to his chest. On the third day, while cleaning the eastern wall, his brush revealed a narrow crack in the plaster, running from floor to ceiling behind the altar. Beneath layers of soot, the outline of a small iron plate emerged, a hidden seam. He tapped it gently. The hollow echo confirmed what he already felt. A chamber. The diocese's records mentioned no crypt beneath St. Amelia's. Yet the floor beneath the altar felt warmer than the rest of the stone, faintly radiant, as if something below still breathed. He fetched a chisel and began clearing the seam. Each strike sent echoes through the walls. After the 5th blow, a flake of marble fell, revealing a thread of red wax underneath, and the faint mark of the Sacred Heart. His hand shook. Wax seals meant secrecy, Vatican secrecy. The candle beside him sputtered. The air grew dense, vibrating with a low hum, a sound like voices underwater chanting in rhythm. He knelt, pressing his ear to the floor. He heard them clearly then, 4 voices singing Agnus Dei. His heart pounded. He whispered the response, "Who takes away the sins of the world?" And the voices fell silent. The flame stilled. For the first time since his arrival, he felt fear not of darkness, but of holiness too close to touch. Father Darcy made the sign of the cross and stepped back. The wax seal glimmered in the candlelight, and beneath it faint writing became visible, Latin words etched into the stone, "Non audiet nisi qui credidit." None shall hear except those who believe. He closed his eyes, breathing the words, and from somewhere deep below the chapel, a single bell rang once, long, low, and sorrowful. He dropped the chisel. The sound faded, but its echo lingered in his chest like a heartbeat. Outside, the fog was returning to the valley. Within it, unseen shapes moved, slow and deliberate, carrying what looked like candles. Father Darcy whispered, "Beatrice." The forest answered only with silence, and the faint, cold scent of lavender drifted through the broken window. Father Darcy returned to the chapel at dawn. The mist still clung to the trees, wrapping the forest in ghostly silver. Inside, everything was motionless, yet the silence no longer felt still. It was expectant, like breath held between prayers. He approached the altar again. The wax seal gleamed faintly in the morning light. It had not been there when the chapel was sealed in 1969. This much he knew. Someone had returned after the disappearance, someone who wanted to hide whatever rested beneath the stone. He pressed his palm against the wax. It was brittle with age, but still intact. A faint heat pulsed beneath it, gentle and rhythmic, like the echo of a living heart. He hesitated, whispering a short prayer, "Show me, Lord, the truth you have hidden here." Then he broke the seal. The crack of wax echoed like thunder through the chapel. Dust fell from the rafters. A gust of wind pushed open the doors, and sunlight spilled across the pews for the first time in decades. Under the loosened slab, he found a narrow compartment, no bigger than a shoebox, lined with old wax drippings and the dry remains of candle wicks. Inside lay a small tin box, bound in red thread. The same thread appeared in several cases Father Darcy had seen while serving in Rome, the kind used by the Vatican archives to bind documents considered not for the faithful. He sat upon the cold floor and, with trembling hands, lifted the box. The tin groaned softly, as if resisting its own opening. When he pried the lid, the smell of smoke and lavender escaped, a scent both holy and mournful. Inside was a folded letter browned by time. The ink faded to a deep sepia. The handwriting was small and uneven, written in haste or fear. At the bottom, barely legible, a signature. Sister Agnes Marie, St. Amelia's Convent, October 1969. Father Darcy unfolded the first page carefully. The words trembled on the paper, as if still alive. To whoever finds this, forgive us. We were told to keep silent, but silence has become unbearable. The voice we heard was not meant for one heart alone. On the night of the third day of Lent, we prayed for mercy over the dying crops. A light appeared through the roof, brighter than any fire, whiter than snow. It did not burn, but it saw us. It moved among us as wind, speaking without sound. It said only this: "The Lamb walks once more." We thought it a vision, a grace sent to strengthen our faith. But the next night, the light returned, descending upon the crucifix. Its glow spread to the walls, and every stone began to hum like a choir. Sister Claire fainted. The rest of us fell to our knees. We felt it enter us, not as pain, but as a warmth beyond endurance. We saw what was to come, a river of blood, a broken church, and a face shining brighter than the dawn. Father Darcy stopped reading, his heart hammered painfully in his chest. He looked around the chapel, seeing it now through the lens of her words, the stones, the altar, the very air alive with the echo of something divine and terrible. He continued, "They told us we must never speak. A bishop arrived the next morning sent by Rome. He took our journals, our confessions, our very names from the parish record. He said the church would not allow confusion, that visions breed rebellion. But the light had not gone. It lived beneath the altar, whispering our prayers back to us. It called each by name. When we sang the Agnus Dei, it answered. And when we stopped, it wept. We feared what would happen when the world discovered it. So we prayed for guidance. That night we were told, not in words, but in understanding, that the only way to preserve the truth was to disappear from the eyes of men. We did not die. We were called below. If the church finds this, let them know. The Lamb still walks." The last line of the letter was smeared, as though touched by tears. Father Darcy pressed the pages to his chest, trembling. He felt a strange peace and an equally strong dread. He whispered, "Lord, if this is madness, let it pass from me, but if it is truth..." The words caught in his throat. Something shifted behind him, a sound like fabric brushing stone. He turned sharply. Nothing, only the candlelight flickering across the walls. Yet he knew he was not alone. The faint smell of lavender returned. The rosaries upon the altar began to sway gently in a wind that did not exist. Father Darcy fell to his knees. The letter slipped from his fingers and landed open upon the stone floor, the inked words trembling in the candlelight. And from beneath the altar came a single, almost imperceptible sound. 4 voices, whispering the same phrase again and again, their tone neither sorrowful nor afraid, but reverent. "Miserere nobis, have mercy on us." Father Darcy barely slept that night. The letter lay open beside his bedroll, its words burned into his thoughts like a brand upon the soul. Outside, the forest swayed beneath a pale moon, the wind sighing through the pines like a distant litany. He tried to pray, but the words tangled in his mouth. What had Sister Agnes meant? "We were called below." The phrase carried no metaphor. It was a testimony. Near dawn, he lit a candle and returned to the altar. The scent of lavender lingered faintly, sweet and heavy, almost human. The rosaries were still moving, their beads clicking softly as if caught in invisible fingers. He touched the stone where he had found the box. It was warm again, a pulse, a heartbeat. For a moment he felt dizzy, as if the ground beneath him breathed in unison with his own lungs. He opened his Bible, seeking solace. The page fell to Isaiah. "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." Isaiah 43:1. The words steadied him. He whispered, "Then call me, Lord, if you must." As he spoke, a low vibration moved through the chapel. Dust lifted gently from the floor, drifting upward like smoke. The candle flames bent toward the altar. Then, from the seam he had uncovered, a sliver of blue light emerged, faint, trembling, like breath behind glass. The same hue described in the letter, the color of the light that had descended upon the sisters. He leaned closer. The glow pulsed, expanding until it spread across the cracks in the stone. The air thickened with warmth. He could hear faint sounds inside it. Singing, yes, but not of this world. Harmonies intertwined, endless and clear, as if the voices themselves were made of light. Father Darcy pressed his hand against the floor. The vibration traveled into his bones. For one unbearable instant, he saw, not with eyes, but with something deeper. He was standing in the chapel, as it had been in 1969, candles blazing, the sisters kneeling in white veils, their faces illuminated by a brilliance that came from nowhere. In their midst stood a figure, neither shadow nor flesh, radiant, neither male nor female, its light clothed in the shape of a lamb crowned in fire. Its eyes were endless, compassionate, terrible. He gasped, stumbling backward. The vision shattered, leaving only silence and the echo of his own heartbeat. The candle fell from his hand, rolling across the floor. Then he heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, approaching from behind. He turned, expecting nothing but the dark. Instead, a faint shape moved near the doorway, the outline of a woman, draped in a habit that shimmered faintly like mist. Her face was hidden, but her voice was unmistakable. Michael. It was his sister's voice. His throat tightened. "Beatrice?" The figure paused. The veil lifted slightly, revealing a glimpse of her mouth, lips that moved with gentleness but no sound. The words formed in his mind instead of his ears. "Do not unseal what heaven has hidden." He fell to his knees. Tears blurred his vision. "Then why show me this?" he whispered. Her answer came like breath against his soul, "Because silence has a purpose, and it is almost over." When he looked again, the figure was gone. Only the candlelight remained, flickering against the cold stone. He stood trembling, half believing, half afraid he had succumbed to the madness of solitude. And yet, at the edge of his vision, the faintest glow still pulsed beneath the floor, steady, patient, alive. He gathered the letter once more, scanning its final line. "If the church finds this, let them know. The Lamb still walks." That phrase haunted him for the rest of the day. What did it mean? Was the light divine, or something masquerading as it? He searched the archives of St. Amelia's, but there were no records beyond 1969. Every file, every baptismal entry after that year had been removed or rewritten. In an old drawer behind the sacristy, he found a single scrap of parchment, torn from a diary. The handwriting matched Sister Agnes's. "We were told to die to the world. Instead, the world died to us." He sat in the silence for hours, unable to move. The candlelight wavered over the crucifix's bronze face. The Christ above seemed almost to breathe, shadows flickering across his eyes. When the wind rose again at twilight, it carried a sound, faint but unmistakable, the bell of St. Amelia's ringing once. This time it came not from the tower but from below, and for a fleeting instant the stones of the chapel floor glowed again with blue light, forming the faint outlines of 4 kneeling figures. Their lips moved in unison, whispering a prayer no human voice could utter. Then the light faded. The forest outside went utterly still, and a soft rain began to fall. A rain that smelled faintly of lavender and salt. Father Darcy bowed his head. He knew the time for silence was ending, and that whatever the sisters had hidden, it was waiting for him to ask the right question. The storm came suddenly that night. Wind, rain, and a deep, rolling thunder that shook the forest like a living drum. Father Darcy remained in the chapel, unwilling to leave the light that had revealed itself. Each strike of lightning illuminated the stained glass remnants, casting fractured halos across the walls. He stood before the altar once more. Beneath his feet, the stone still pulsed faintly, as if answering the rhythm of the storm. He had promised himself he would not dig. But faith, when wounded by wonder, is not easily restrained. He gathered his tools. The chisel trembled in his hand. Each strike echoed through the nave like a bell tolling for the dead. Dust rose. The candle beside him flickered violently but did not go out. After the 10th blow, the marble gave way. A thin line cracked open across the floor, and from within escaped a current of warm air, scented faintly with myrrh and lavender. Father Darcy dropped to his knees, brushing the dust aside. Beneath the marble lay another layer of stone, darker, smoother, carved with faint symbols, crosses, lambs, and circles, interwoven like a litany. At the center of it all, an iron ring. He hesitated only a moment before pulling it. The slab lifted slightly, enough to reveal a hollow space beneath. From that hollow rose a sound so gentle it could have been imagined. 4 voices humming in harmony, neither mournful nor joyous, like breath drawn from eternity. He lowered the candle into the darkness. The light revealed a narrow stairway descending into stone. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33. His pulse raced. Each step downward felt colder, damper, as though the air itself aged. The candle hissed against the humidity. At the bottom of the stairs, he entered a small chamber, circular, carved entirely by hand. 4 niches lined the walls, each containing a folded habit, perfectly preserved, and beside each a rosary laid in a circle of salt. In the center stood a wooden stand, not a coffin, not an altar, but something between the two. Upon it rested a glass vessel filled with a faintly glowing liquid. The light inside it pulsed in rhythm, breathing like a living thing. Father Darcy's knees weakened. He whispered, "Lord, into your hands I commend my spirit." And the vessel emitted a soft sound, a whisper that was not air, not language. It vibrated through the walls until the words became clear. "Remember my body." He stumbled backward, colliding with the stone. His candle fell, but the chamber did not darken. The glow from the vessel intensified, filling the space with a blue-gold radiance that revealed ancient inscriptions on the walls. Prayers in Latin, scratched by trembling hands. He read them aloud, voice shaking. "We are not lost. We are kept. The Lamb is light. Do not let Rome bury what heaven revealed." His breath came fast, shallow. The letter from Sister Agnes, its last line now echoed around him in living light. "The Lamb still walks." He reached toward the vessel, drawn not by curiosity, but by longing. The air around it shimmered with warmth. For a moment he thought he saw faces reflected in its glow, the 4 sisters, serene, eyes closed in prayer. When his fingers brushed the glass, the hum deepened. A pulse of light surged outward, surrounding him. For a heartbeat he was blind. In that blindness came a vision. He saw the chapel above as it had once been, walls shining like fire, the crucifix alive with radiance. He saw the sisters kneeling, their faces luminous, and behind them an endless procession of light descending from heaven, countless as the stars. Then he saw something else, a bishop in black robes, sealing the door, pressing wax into the cracks, whispering, "Better they be forgotten than worshipped." When he opened his eyes again, the glow had softened. The vessel was still. The chamber was silent. But one thing had changed. The habits in the niches were gone. In their place, 4 faint outlines glowed on the walls, the silhouettes of kneeling women, drawn in light and ash. He fell to his knees, trembling. "If this is truth," he whispered, "then the church has hidden a miracle." The light flickered once more faintly, and a single tear, clear as crystal, rolled down the inside of the vessel. He turned to climb the stairs, but at the first step he froze. From above, through the open crack, he could hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy, as though someone waited in the chapel above. He whispered his sister's name. The footsteps stopped. Then came a voice, not hers, not human, but gentle and commanding, resonating through the stone. "Do not fear what has been kept in silence. Fear only what comes to speak." The air went cold. The candle in his hand extinguished itself. And in that perfect darkness, he understood that what slept beneath St. Amelia's was not merely memory. It was faith incarnate, waiting for permission to rise. Morning broke grey and still over the Vermont hills. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. The chapel stood silent, as if nothing had stirred within its walls for half a century. Father Darcy emerged from the stairway, covered in dust, his hands trembling. The candle he carried had burned to its end, yet the air around him still glowed faintly, as if the light below had followed him upward. He looked toward the altar. The rosaries were gone. In their place, a single white lily had appeared, fresh, unbroken, resting where the sisters once prayed. He fell to his knees. The silence was soft now, no longer heavy with fear, but filled with peace. He realized then that the sisters had never vanished. They had surrendered themselves to the divine, to become intercession, not memory. The words of Sister Agnes echoed in his heart. "We were not lost. We were kept." He wept quietly, not from terror, but awe. The air seemed to breathe around him, and in that breath he heard a truth that no decree could silence. God's miracles do not die when buried. They wait until faith is ready to see them again. He left the letter on the altar, folded neatly beneath the lily. He did not call Rome. He did not write a report. He simply locked the chapel door and placed the key in the hollow of a tree, where rain and time would one day take it. As he walked down the forest path, the wind rose once more, gentle this time, carrying the faint sound of 4 voices singing Agnus Dei. Light entered where faith had once fled. That night, villagers saw a soft radiance hovering above the ruins, as if the chapel itself had turned into a prayer. None dared approach, and when morning came, the light was gone. Only the scent of lavender remained. Some said the priest had gone mad. Others believed he had been taken as the sisters were, not in death, but in grace. No one ever saw Father Darcy again. But sometimes when fog drifts down St. Amelia's Hill, locals say you can hear the bell ring once, not as a warning, but as a welcome. Because heaven remembers what earth forgets. If this story moved you, comment below. Faith remains. Share this video with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for more Bible stories and mysteries, where faith, silence, and miracles still speak.